Hello, readers. I just finished a great series that I'm excited to bring to you. Have you ever been in a VR or one of those video games in the arcade where you're slightly enclosed in the environment of the game? It's surreal and unsettling. At the end of the day, you can simply slip the visor off or step out of the booth. But what if you couldn't? What if you hated video games and then found yourself in one? What would the stakes be? Well, this series is all about that subject. We're looking at Trapped in a Video Game by Dustin Brady. It's a 5-book series, and I recommend that if you buy it, buy the whole series. It's a fantastic and perfectly suited for that 8-year-old who likes transport literature, or sci-fi, or even a bit of fantasy. This series has elements of each of those subgenres. I picked up the first book not expecting to like it and was, well, trapped. Sucked into the story, you might even say. The story is mainly about two boys, Jesse and his best friend Eric, who continue to get trapped in various video games. The plot is full of fun and hilarity, as many hijinks ensue once they're in each of the video games and get trapped. Not only that, but throughout the series, there's a bigger story afoot. Each book ends with a cliffhanger ending, leading to the next book in the series. This could be made into a TV series, which, with each book being one season, it works that well. It's recommended for 8 to 10-year-olds, and I've never seen a series so well matched for its age group. I believe my 5th grader would fly through these books, but they're perfect for that 2nd to 4th grader who will enjoy these stories thoroughly. Having the book series mainly feature Jesse and Eric, we can look at these two characters in detail. There are many characters, all of whom I believed are well developed and make for an intriguing story. Jesse is a timid boy who, despite the series name, hates video games. His part is the exact opposite of a character who would be willing to do anything adventurous. In fact, sometimes I dislike his lack of enthusiasm for such grand adventure. He's not fit for it. But because of all this, I think his character is rather perfect. He certainly is the main character, with Eric being a supporting character. It is his good sense and groundedness that keeps the story rolling and also keeps the boys out of immense danger. Most of the time, anyway. Eric is that opposite character who's willing to do, well, anything. He's always game. Sorry, I couldn't help the pun. I'm a dad, and dad jokes are kind of our thing. Moving on. Eric is adventurous. He runs into danger blindly, but he's also observant, and his quick thinking pairs well with Jesse's careful planning. Often, his quick thinking, when plans go awry, also keeps the boys out of danger. Between the both of them, there's a lot of luck, and because of their relationship, luck, and the unreal circumstances they find themselves in, the characters are rather perfect for the story. Analysis. This series is simple. Far simpler than the cover looks like it would be. These books, I am assuming, make up to that 30 to 50,000 word count. I read them each in one sitting for like an hour or two. As I've mentioned previously, they're just simple. They're definitely middle grade, and I would put them in the 6 to 10 age group. While upper middle grade to young adults is more of my bread and butter, I thoroughly enjoyed this series. It brought back many sci-fi themes to discovery and questioning, things like what would happen if blank happened. They were quite enjoyable to read. Dustin Brady asks many great questions and brings in some sharp and witty humor and some inspiration from real-world sources and companies, and some light fantasy elements that also inspire many of video games. Overall, I give this series 4 stars, making it an enjoyable, recommended read for its age group. The major themes for this series are often about doing what is right, even when it's hard. The boys often have to make tough choices, and those tough choices have some very real and potentially unforgivable consequences. Yet, they still have to do the right thing, even though the right thing may cost them dearly, doing everything they can to help those around them. One thing lacking in this series is the parents of both boys, who rarely make an appearance. Writing style. This was a great narrative, a great story, but quite simplistic writing. It's very easy to read, as I've stated. I would imagine a second or third grader having no problem reading this series and would be able to track along with it easily. To the older crowd, this book may not keep their attention, especially those beyond 10 years of age. But for them, it could also be a fun and light read for something like a good summer read or a good weekend book. Now, one thing I want to mention is the plot. The story, I think, is no good in just a single book. The series needs to be read, not just one book. I wouldn't recommend just buying one book because each book ends with a cliffhanger for the subsequent book. When the series are read in its entirety, which I would guess is somewhere around the 200,000 words count, it is an excellent story. The plot is easy to read for the whole series, but again, I would say it takes the whole series to see the brilliance of the plot, which is quite brilliant. Very inspiring for any aspiring sci-fi middle grade writers out there. So what are the gospel connections? I mean, it's a book about video games, but even still, I think there are several connections. Without getting too into detail, there are a lot of examples of self-sacrifice. This series is all about putting others first. It's about having integrity and doing the right thing simply because it is the right thing. There are a couple of mentions of church and God, which makes me believe that Brady has at least a background in faith. That faith informs how the story is written and develops. But it is in the background. It's not out front, but you see it in the kindness, generosity, and willingness to sacrifice for others. One of my favorite things about the series is how Jesse and Eric work together to solve problems. They are boys, but despite their issues, they are working to put the other person first. They even fight about it sometimes. What a joy it would be if we lived in a world where we fight to put the other person first. I remember a Berenstain Bears book about this. Also was a Christian author, by the way, at least the son was, or is, where Brother Bear and Sister Bear are at odds in the beginning, and in the end fight to be the kindest. This is sort of what happens here, and I love it. What a great example of friendship. For the social impact, I'm going to add an element to this portion. While it hits the social impact portion of this podcast in many ways, there are also great elements of leadership seen throughout the book. So I want to discuss both briefly. Like in the gospel section, there's an element of friendship. These boys exemplify what it means to be a friend to someone, not just to each other, but several characters in the book. They don't necessarily want to do the things they're doing, but because they are putting others first and being neighborly, they also become great friends with those around them. Likewise, they exemplify great leadership throughout the series, not because they're decisive and dominant, but because they lead in ways that cause others to be transformed by their example. They infectiously include people in the story and get them involved with helping. They show amazing attitudes of leadership, which should be followed by those who read these stories. Final thoughts. This is an excellent series for the 6 to 10 crowd. I would put it at 4 stars. It is simple but well written. My one issue is that it is not a one-off story for each book. Though it could be read that way, the cliffhangers and storyline are seen best when reading the full series, but is well worth it for the younger middle grade age group to read this story. I heartily recommend this book series for that age group to enjoy. It doesn't take long, and they will be entertained throughout the entirety of the series. Until next time, have a good read. Thanks, readers, for joining us on today's episode. We've got some great books coming up for you. Feel free to stop by randallmurphy.com for more great content. My book, Fables of Lenore, The King and the Shadow Lord, are available via my website. If you've read it, I would love a review on Amazon to see how to better shape this story for my audience. I'm currently writing the second book in the series, so it's a perfect time to voice your opinion. Also, be on the lookout for news of my new children's picture book, which will be available in a couple of months. Some honorable mentions include The Cul-de-Sac Kids by Beverly Lewis for 6 to 10-year-olds, The Chronicles of Narnia series by C.S. Lewis for ages 8 to 12, and The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien for 12 to 16. If you would like to suggest a review, you can do so at randallmurphy.com and click Book Reviews at the top of the page. I do reviews for free, so if you've written a book, let me know. If you like this podcast, please subscribe or follow. And feel free to leave a review. It helps spread the word. Until next time, have a good read.